Hey folks, Mel the Train Shooter back in the studio and back with a bit of a Let's Make special for you. Halloween is upon us and I have been tasked with making some spooky scenery. Now, I was thinking about making some spooky woods or perhaps a creepy churchyard or crypt. And then, well, I've been getting a lot of requests for like blood pools and blood fountains and demonic stuff, so I thought, why not do a demonic altar? Now, I'm a long-term war gamer, yeah, and I used to stomp the old fantasy battle and I was a chaos player back then, and I do love my cornflakes. So, I've got some gribblies here. Yeah, we've got this skull, which I got off one of the artists in the studios. Yeah, my hat was resting on it. It's been retasked. And then we've got these skulls here. And if I show you on the close cam, yeah, they're quite nifty. I'm tasking myself with putting all this together to make a cool demonic altar. Now this is a two-parter. In this part we'll be looking at the main construction. In the second part we'll be looking at the painting and a load of cool resin effects for the blood and all that sort of stuff. That being said, this is a Let's Make, but it's a bit of a special like our trenches. So it's a little vloggy, little tutorial-y, because I've got to figure out how I'm going to do it as I'm going along. So you're along for the ride. So with that in mind, here's the basic idea. What I want to do is, let's show you on that one, yeah. I've got this skull. I'm thinking about chipping this off so I can drop it down and building some sort of altar here with a warp gate with some horns on here. I did go round Stoke-on-Trent to see if I could find some cheap and tacky, horny devil horns. Yeah, and of all the places I would have thought I could find some with easy would be Stoke, yeah, no, not at all. I'm quite surprised, so I'm going to have to make those. But we're going to put the horns on, and that'll make the devil gate, so I need a platform, and I need some stairs around the back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a base with the water effects around it. Now, I'm not going to do the base till a little bit later because, yeah, I need to figure out what size the centerpiece is. Because I'm going to have resin effects, I need to make sure I've got enough room on the base around it for everything to fit. So the first thing we've got to do is tackle the centerpiece, which means chopping this little bad boy up. Crack on. So I've cut down my skull, and if you look at it you can see that we've sort of flattened the top, we've taken the bottom off, and we've sort of cut this flat at the back. Now the reason I've cut it flat at the back is because I intend to use this expanded polystyrene sheets, and what I'm going to do is cut it into pieces and sort of build it up to create sort of stairs that are going to come up here and around the back here. That's what I'm thinking. Once we've got the stairs in place, I'll be able to figure out where I'm going to put the skulls on it and then how we're going to dress it, and then it'll be basing. So next job, build some stairs. So that's my step shaped, and it's time to figure out the actual base size. Now for the basing, I'm using EPVC, expanded PVC foam board, available as free scrap from any good sign printers. And what I need to do is, basically I need to get my skull and put my skull on. Yeah, and then I need to get my sides, put my sides on. They may need to be longer, we'll see how we go. Yeah, I am figuring it as we go. And then what I've got to do is sort of figure out where my skulls are going to go and where my base needs to go. So, if my skulls are going to reach out at least that far, yeah, and then this is going to be with the water area, we need pretty much all the way around there. And I'll just draw this out. Next job, cut it out, bevel it, give it a bit of a sand, and then we'll be back to construct our actual altar. So that's my base cut out and beveled and sanded. Now I did use power tools, but you can use standard blades and normal sandpaper. It's just quick with power tools. Just remember, watch your fingers and mask up if you're sanding. Now if you look at my base, you'll notice that I've got some markings on it. This is so we can get to the construction stage and start figuring out where things to go. So I put my skull on and that fits between these lines and there. These are going to go up to there. Yeah, that's going to go there. And then that is going to go there. Now my next job is I need to glue these down so I can start shaping, cutting things out and adding the skull decorations. I'm going to be using a mixture of PVA and hot glue. I'll use a couple of spots of hot glue just to get it stuck in place, and then I'll cover the rest with PVA and that'll dry overnight and give me a nice firm bond. So, crack on. So all fixed to the base, and I've done a little bit of shaping just around here, just cleaned off these edges so they're a little bit more flat. It'll just help when I come to place my skulls on it. But before we get to the skull stage, we've got to do the ground stage. And to be perfectly honest, Mel would have probably been a smart boy if I'd done this before I glued them down, but hey ho. So the idea is I have some 10mm XPS, extruded polystyrene foam, okay, and the idea is I want to create an earth embankment around here where the blood will sit in the middle of here, yeah, and I just need to raise this up around there. So the battle plan is to lay this on top of there, shape it out, then get my general shape, start doing my cutting and see if I can fit it all up and sort of see if I can make it work. That's the challenge anyway. So to cut it, all I'm going to do is use my standard blade there, and then I'll get cracked on. So let's get cracked on. So that's the earth rim of our demonic temple done, and if you come on down, yeah, you can see what I've done here. Now basically what I've done is I cut the large piece out, figure out where my pieces were going to go, and because I glued the skull down first, I had to sort of jerry rig it and sort of cut it out and put it together and figure it all out. It was doable. My advice to you is do it before you actually do the centerpiece, once you know how large your base is. Okay, now once it was actually glued down and shaped, I nipped around the edges. It was glued down with the hot glue and a little bit of PVA. hot glue to fix it, PVA to dry and then hold it over top. I then came along with the blade, beveled it off, yeah, a little bit of sanding, and then came back with a little pencil and did some engraving. And as you can see, the actual effects, really good. Now what I'm trying to go for here is that this has burst out of the ground and raised up and ripped the ground apart. So I'm definitely getting there. And we've got to the stage now where it's time to scull it up. Okay, now I've been looking at this and my initial thought was, with regards to these, cut them off there and embed them like that against it so they were recessed. It's been a bit of a palaver to cut these off, okay? So I think what I'm going to do is use the blade. I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut this back, okay? Allowing me to sit these back without the cutting. That being said, I am doing a little bit of cutting because I don't want them just straight on the ground. So what I've started to do is I've started to take the bottom jaw off these. Now for this, the very best tool is a jewellery saw. Yeah, it cuts through it really quick and easy. I'm sure you could use other things if you've got them, but I like a jewellery saw. Yeah, obviously, watch your fingers. Now my next job is I've got to cut this back, yeah, and then start embedding skulls in and around here. I'm expecting to lose a reasonable amount of foam when I do this, to be perfectly honest, looking at it. Yeah, because I'm not recessing them, as I'm not cutting the backs off them and just putting them on. That being said, it's not a problem because they're going to be topped on top when we do the very top layer anyway. So that's what it's looking like right now. Okay, I'll bring it back when it's all sculled up. So I'm halfway through sculling it up and I thought I'd take you through where I am and the sort of things that the challenges and that sort of stuff at this moment. Yeah, so if you come down here you can see my skulls have been going on and they've been going on absolutely fine. My bottom skulls where I cut the jaw off, then I've started adding skulls on the top of here. Now these have been really easy to do because I've used the black foam and I've been able to pick in and make recesses for me to sit the skulls into. Even though I already cut my substructure down at the start, I've still had to recess it a little bit more. Or because of the shape of the skull, it'd be like a flat wall and like that, and they'd be too pronounced. So being able to dig into the foam has allowed me to sort of reset and recess the skull into it. Works really well. But if you come here, you'll notice on this one, yeah, you can see how far I've actually cut into those steps, especially if we compare it to the other side. Let me use the other camera. There you are. Yeah, so as you can see how far I've cut into this side, yeah, compared to what we started off with. That's perfectly okay. I knew that this is a substructure, so I knew that I'd be cutting into it. Absolutely fine. Yeah, that's what this foam's really good at. It's really tough, but also you can pick at it, it's easy to cut. It's a lot easier to work with than HD foam when you're doing this sort of scratch building, you know what I mean? Yeah. Now, on the actual steps, I originally started off with the idea of going 1, 2, 3, 4, but I think the skulls are going to dictate it. And I think we're going to end up with 3. That's perfectly fine. I'll get my skulls in, and once I see the sort of relative heights of the top of the skull heads, then I'll be able to bulk it up and put my sort of plateaus on. It'll make sense when we get round to that bit. So with that in mind, I'll get stuck into this and get it finished, and I'll bring it back once it's all sculled up. So we're all sculled up, and if you come take a look, it's looking good, isn't it? Now, if I slowly move it round, you can see all my skulls that I've added onto there. It's really looking a little bit demonic. Now that goes all the way around. Yeah, and to the front. Now, next stage is, obviously I put the substructure in and I've used foam. You don't have to use foam, okay? I'm going to be using various different bits of foam because I'm sort of scratch building. If you haven't got this sort of supply, then remember, you can do your substructure just with rolled up bits of newspaper with masking tape around them, glue them in place with hot glue, and then just cover it over with a bit of plaster bandage. You don't have to use foam for your substructure. Yeah, there are other options. Now, because I have used foam, it's left me with a little bit of a problem. And if I bring it round here and I tilt it up like that, you should see that there's some gaps here. Yeah, I misjudged my cuts, the hot glue melted it a bit, and so I'm a little bit gappy. So my next job is I need to fill these gaps, and I also need to sort of level it off. We started off with like 4 steps. We've actually ended up with 3. Okay, and so what I need to do is I need to bring my substructure here, yeah, which is just below the skulls, level of the skulls, and I need to bring it up in line with the top of the skulls. So about 5 mil on here, about 10 mil on there, about 5 mil on there. Yeah, that's the next little job. So all I'm going to do for that is I've got 5 mil blue foam, 10 mil blue foam. I've got some expanded black foam for wedging in between gaps and cutting down. Should be fine. I'm going to use a mixture of hot glue and PVA. I could use just PVA and pins, but the hot glue allows me to keep working as the PVA is drying. So I'll get stuck into this and you guys can follow along. So that's all my gaps stuffed, and I gave them a good stuffing. And if you look round, you can see it's sort of iggledy-piggledy, but it's only a substructure, so I can get away with it. Okay, but as you can see, I have used pins in some places just to hold them while the glue was drying. Yeah, I'll take those out now. Next job is we need to start filling the gaps. And what I mean by filling the gaps is if I spin it round to here, yeah, and sort of show you. We've got lots of little gaps around here and around these gaps here. Also, this isn't perfectly level. I've got it as close as I can, but I'm restricted to 5 and 10 mil foam, which if my skulls are say 13 millimeters high, sort of leaves me with a 3 mil gap. And that's where the DAS modelling putty comes in, which is my next job. I've got some DAS modelling putty air drying clay. And what I'm going to be doing is basically filling in all these gaps and levelling it off. Now I've filled in most of the bulk of my substructure. And at the same time, yeah, I've got a load of holes and stuff around here and gaps here that I need to fill as well. So basically, I'm just getting blobs of DAS and shoving it in. Now, when I do this, one quick thing, we've got a mix of materials. We've got EPVC, we've got polystyrene, we've got plastic, and DAS can struggle to key into some of these materials. So, quick tip for you, when you're doing this sort of work, get yourself a brush, get yourself a tub of water, okay? Water helps the DAS key in. So I've got my brush. I'll do it on this camera so you can see it nice and clearly. We'll do this side. Yeah. So all I'm going to do is with my brush, I'm just going to give some water around there. Yeah. Get my DAS modelling putty, and then I can just push it in. Yeah. And the good thing about when you use the water is the DAS doesn't come away. Sometimes when you push DAS in, you can pull it and it'll just come completely away because it's not keyed. Brush your water first, keys it in, and as you can see, yeah, works to a treat. Now, I am going to be texturing this up and doing other things. This is still substructure work, so I don't have to be too fancy. But I have got a damp rag. If it gets to anywhere on my skulls I don't want it to, I can wipe it off. So, But I get stuck into this now. Well, that's me almost finished playing with my DAS, and I've got quite white hands. But we've done most of the substructure, and if you look at it, it's really starting to come together. Yeah? Now you can see where I've covered over all the sections. If I bring it round to this gap, yeah, I've filled in all in between all my skulls and that sort of stuff. It's a little bit messy, okay, where I was pushing it in, especially around the edges as it meets the skulls. It's easier to clean that up when the DAS is all dried, yeah, than trying to go in, because if you go in and try and clean it up now, you'll move the bulk of the DAS. Let the DAS dry, because all that mess is actually just little bits, which means with a damp cloth or a brush, you'll be able to clean them up really quickly. So that's a job I'm leaving until the DAS dries. But there's one final DAS job I've got to do. Okay, now as you've known as I'm coming up, because my substructures and my layers have been iggledy-piggledy with the skulls and that sort of stuff, I've been filling in and making platforms, but I've reached the top. And if you look at it, you can see that it's not level at all, nowhere near. But I'm going to be wanting to put a plateau on top of here, yeah, to house the actual altar and all that sort of stuff. So to do that, what we need to do is make sure it's level, yeah. And to get it level, I've got a little trick for you. I've got a sheet of plastic here. You can use EPVC, you can use anything which DAS won't stick to. So anything plasticky, DAS will struggle to, especially if it's dry. Now, if I put that on there, it's a little bit rocky. But what I intend to do is get my DAS, I'm going to do a long sausage, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the sausage, yeah, so that it runs around here, around there, all the way around. And then once it's on, I'm just going to press my my plastic down on it, and that will give me a ring all the way round, which should be the perfect level and will be the support for when we come along and use our HD foam, yeah, to do our upper plateau, which will be the job after this. So, I need to get messy again. See you in a sec. Now my little ring of DAS is all dry, and as you can see, yeah, it's flattened out and I can put things on top of it and they're perfectly stable, yeah, and it's looking really, really good. And Mel is a happy chappy. But before we can put the top platform on this for us to build our altar on, yeah, I need to do something. Mel's got to sort those horns out. Now, I've still been looking around, no joy, so I'm going to have to make them. So, let me show you what I've been doing. I've got some cardboard, yeah, and I cut out some templates, okay, and I've got a left and a right. I only actually need one, but I just did both anyway. Yeah, and over here I've got some 1-inch extruded polystyrene XPS identity stuff. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to sort of carve out these horns. So I've got my my two pieces. Let me show you on this camera. I've got those two horns there. Yeah, and I'm going to have to leave a bit at the bottom to sort of shape where they come into on these points here. Yeah, and then I've got a middle piece that I can use for the side profile. Now what I've got to basically do is etch this out with a blade, then go in very carefully and cut it out, shape it, sand it, and basically make a couple of horns out of this block of foam. Would have been easier if I could find some, but I couldn't, so let's crack on. So Mel's been a horny little so-and-so, and I have been busy with my horns. They're looking rather good. Okay, as you saw in the quick time lapse, it was just a matter of using my template, cutting them out, beveling the edges and just sanding them off. They're not perfect, but they're certainly good enough. And if you take a look, you can see how they work. Now at the minute, I've just got them held in with pins. I don't want to glue them in just yet. The reason being is I need to put the altar on the top of here. To do that, I need to cut out the shape. It's easier without the horns on, yeah, than with the horns on. So we need to do the plateau next. Yeah, and what I'll be doing for that is I've got some blue foam here. We'll take the horns off, we'll rest this on top. We'll get a general outline of what we need to do. We'll cut it out and then we'll trim it back once it's in situ and we're happy with it. Once we've got our sort of template bit, then we can cut some holes for our horns to go through and I can actually glue my horns on. Yeah, it's all coming together, isn't it? It's looking really nice. Right, I'll get cracked on. So cutting the top out, it was a little bit higgledy-piggledy. Get the rough shape, get it on so I can actually see what I'm doing, then trim it round and figure out where things go. The really challenging bits were obviously trying to figure out how deep to cut those recesses so I can get my horns on there, which is the next job. Okay, and then on top of that, yeah, what I also did was I cut another piece. Now this is 10mm foam, this is 5mm foam, and this fits perfectly on top. Now I've done that for a very special reason, but it's part of the detailing, so I'm not going to explain it to you now because the next video is out on Tuesday. Yeah, so you'll have to get your answer on then, and I'll show you the detailing then. But right now what we need to do is we need to get our horns glued down and we need to get this top piece glued down and basically get us well on the way for finishing off. The other thing that I have to do is I've got to cut some blue foam for around here as well. Okay, so I'll get stuck into that once these are glued on. Right, gluing it on, it's going to be dead easy. We're going to go for a little bit of hot glue. Now, hot glue can melt polystyrene, so I'm going to switch my hot glue glue gun on, and as soon as it's able to get glue out of it, I'm going to use that glue because that'll be the coolest glue possible to use on this. Then I've got no risk of melting my horns or melting my skull and this all messing up in true Mel fashion. So I'll get the horns glued on, we'll get this stuck on, and then we'll cut some little flats for, we might not even need to cut the flats for those just yet actually. I'll save those for the next video as well. Let's get this on. So guys, that's the horns glued on and they're looking good. And I've also glued the basic plateau down. So we have taken this as far as we can take it in this in this video. And I must admit, it's looking rather nice. Now this is just the basic construction. In the next video we're going to be going over the fine detailing, finishing off the build, painting it up, and then doing a load of cool resin effects and stuff that you probably won't seen it before. So keep your eyes out for that one. But in the meantime, yeah, looking good. Now obviously if you've liked this, yeah, then like it down below. If you've got any questions or comments, that's what the comments are for. And as always guys, if you do like these videos, and I assume you do because you make it to the end of them, yeah, then please consider supporting them. There's links down below. There's the Patreon. I only ask $1 a month. You can't even buy a coffee or a pint with $1, but you can support me and you can help me bringing these videos to you. And if you're not into the monthly thing with Patreon, then there's a link to PayPal if you just want to send a quick pint, digital pint, a couple of quid by PayPal. It's all appreciated guys. And if you're not into the giving money thing and you fancy helping me out with the studio, there's the Amazon wish list below that with bits and bobs I need for the studio. All of it helps keep me in here, keep these lights on and making these videos for you guys. So if you do enjoy it, please support it guys. And in the meantime, it looks cracking, doesn't it? I'll be back finishing it off real soon. All the best, yeah? Ta-ra.